started. It's the foundations that you have to build upon. You'll be able to reflect back on things that you've learned here and use a lot of these tools as you go on. So I'm going to give you more information, and we're going to do an activity, but I really want to sort of have a reflective theme for this presentation and really thinking about, can you all hear me, or do I need to do a microphone for the all right. I got to see, hello.
Just hold it to your chest, it's fine.
It's cool now? Oh, good. Oh, all right. Never mind. I got to see my son graduate from 5th grade, and he used a microphone for the first time, and it's so fun to watch kids be like, hello, testing. Everybody had to adjust it for their height. It was fun. Okay. Well, yeah, so I just want to check in. I know you're all have a lot of information coming at you, and it's a foundation. This is where we start. This is where we begin, and we're having a really solid foundation built over this week, and I feel like from what I hear, you're making connections, and you're really engaged, and I'm just really excited to see sort of how this all progresses. After I left here, I get so nervous when I have these kinds of presentations to do, right? So after I left here, I kind of realized I didn't really give you a proper introduction of who I am and like the context of why I'm here talking about mentoring and what I do exactly. So that's where I want to start today. Since 2004, I've been working on a project called My Life. And My Life, I told you a little bit about, is a study looking at the best ways to support adolescents in foster care as they're transitioning to adulthood. And we always early on focused on adolescents with disabilities, so adolescents that were in special education. And the goal of the project was to implement and test a model for enhancing self-determination and transition outcomes for youth with and without disabilities in foster care. We had 2 specific research questions in My Life. Does the My Life model improve self-determination of youth in foster care, and what impact does enhanced self-determination have on the transition outcomes for youth in foster care? So in 2004, I started off as a coach, all right? So that meant that I was in the community working directly with the youth and implementing this intervention. And I'll talk a lot about the intervention. I'll talk a little bit more about the research design, but my primary role was a coach. I worked one-on-one with these young people for all these years. And as time went on, I sort of was able to grow in my role and become a lead interventionist. And then the last 4 or 5 years, I was a project manager. So I worked with fewer youth because I was supervising and training other coaches. But I always maintained my community connection with the young people. So I always identify first and foremost as a youth worker. That's where I come from. And coaching, our way of coaching and our philosophy is very much what many people consider mentoring to look like. So that's kind of why I come here with this hat of mentoring on, because we've been implementing a mentoring model for 10 years now. So My Life was just one of several studies that we had at the RRI over the last 10 years. We had the My Life pilot. That was the very first one we started with. You can see it has a small N. Then we had Project Success follow that. It was really similar to My Life. The population was a little bit younger. These are all adolescents in foster care. In Project Success, they were 14, 15 years old and all in special education. That project had a higher emphasis on education over the other domains. We talked about these domains, right? Daily life, career, education. So Project Success had a higher emphasis on education. Better Futures, it's actually a project I'm working on again now. That project is looking at ways to support seniors who are in foster care, preparing them to explore options for college. So our whole goal is to, if they're not opposed to going to college, we just want to expose them to options and help them see what might be a possibility for them. What are they interested in? Where do they want to go? What educational environment might be a good fit? Then we had the large My Life, which was actually 2 federal grants that came in at the same time. And that allowed us to serve all the youth in 3 counties that were eligible, meaning they didn't have to be in special ed anymore. We could serve all the youth in foster care within a specific age range in the 3 metro counties here in Portland metro area. So it was really huge, and we got to work from, I don't know if most of you aren't from here, but I don't know how big our geographical area was, but we were all the way out in Lake Cornelius, which is heading out to the coast, and then heading east to Troutdale. and north and south as far as you can go within 3 counties. So we were able to really affect a lot of youth. These were all experimental studies. Okay, so, well, I'll get to that in a second. In all of these projects, they're all variations of each other. My Life is always the foundational project, and it has a specific approach, and we use a specific curriculum. Project Success, Better Futures, they are variations of My Life, so they have similar features in them. And on here, you can see some of the cross-cutting components of these interventions. And that was a consistent, committed, accepting, and transparent relationship with an adult or a near peer. So the youth that were in the intervention received what we called coaching, right? And we talk about coaches as being mentors, and then we also accessed peer mentoring. Some of our coaches were peers, or near peers as we call them, right? A near peer is someone who's a little bit older but has a very similar life experience. They can relate directly to being in special education. They can relate directly to being in foster care or having a mental health diagnosis. So that's a near peer. But they're a little bit farther along. They're already in college. They're just a little bit older. They had the opportunity to apply skills, specific skills. The curriculum we use is concrete skill-based curriculum where the youth get to work in some buckets. We call them categories: achievement, partnership, and goal setting. We're going to talk about some specific skills today and how to be effective in talking to your mentors or your support network and accessing them and taking yourself to the next level. So you'll get a taste of the skills. Doing activities in the community, they're all very community-based. We get out and about, we get things done. So the youth aren't just sitting with us having a chit-chat all the time. We are helping them figure out what they want out of life and then getting into the community and doing it and helping them access their support network. Self-attribution is a huge part. Oh, the workshops. We had peer workshops, so the youth got to vote on what topics they might want to hear on, and then we had additional peers come in and facilitate the workshop. So there's always a component where we're supporting the next generation coming up, right? So I'm supporting young leaders in learning how to be leaders, and so that they can run and facilitate these groups, right? And then they're going to facilitate the next generation coming up, and they become the mentors for the new mentors. Does that make sense? So it's all about building up this network and this community and paying it forward. We really are a community. You know, these youth, the first round of youth I started coaching, they're like 28, 29 now, and they still keep in touch. And now they're my mentors that I bring in, you know, to do presentations or work on panels or go and do, we do a lot of public speaking at different conferences around the country and in the state. And we always bring a young person with us who can tell us their personal experience with these projects and what it was like to have a coach and how it affected them. So some of the outcomes across the projects, you'll see, so the My Life pilot, I'm not going to run through all of these really specifically because you have them here, but in general, overall the projects, we saw increased levels of self-determination. Youth in the intervention graduated at higher levels. They had more concrete things like bank accounts, jobs, participated in their transition planning at higher levels. Better Futures had some really significant findings around youth being in college, and these are all longitudinal studies, which I'll talk a little bit more about from My Life. But 6 months post-intervention for Better Futures, this was the project that was really focused on helping youth access college. 73% of the youth in the intervention, 6 months post-intervention, were in college, compared to 36% of the youth who were not in the intervention. So they more than doubled the rate of youth who actually started going to college. So the My Life design, I'm going to talk a little bit about that specifically because it pretty much is a model for how all of these projects worked, and My Life is the one that I was on and most intimately involved with, so it's the one I'm most comfy with. It was a randomized control trial, right? So all the youth consented to participate. They all knew that they had a 50-50 shot of getting a coach or going into the control group, okay? It was longitudinal. We had 3 time points where these youth were assessed. So they were assessed right when they consented to participate. They were assessed 1 year later. So the intervention group had a year of intervention and they were assessed, and the control group had 1 year of just their typical life and they were assessed. Same assessment at every time point, right? And then 1 year after that, so it'd be post-intervention, 1 year post-intervention for the intervention group, and then 1 more year for the control group, we did the same assessment. So that's 3 time points. Then, I think you all or maybe you did, Jessica Schmidt, who's been here from the RRI, she actually, part of her PhD dissertation, she got funded to do a Time 4 assessment. So she's been working really hard for years now to track down this mobile population that we had in my life and get a fourth time point. So we actually have quite a bit of data on these youth, and that is what many of us are busy doing right now, is cleaning data, inputting data, still collecting data. I mean, we're in the throes of getting all the data from the last wave of our youth so we can have some real solid numbers. It's multi-perspective. We have youth, teachers, caregivers, and coworkers all doing assessments. So we're not just looking at one person's perspective. And it's inclusive. We are the first project that has done a randomized experimental control trial with this population looking at self-determination, and we were inclusive in our data gathering, meaning we collected data from every youth that participated. There have been a couple other giant studies that have looked at this population and looked at outcomes and services, but they always excluded youth that had significant mental health diagnoses or cognitive disabilities. We really pride ourselves on being extremely inclusive and providing accommodations to get data from everybody. There's a small percentage of our youth that had a significant cognitive disability, and we had a modified assessment that we did with those youngsters. Everybody else, we just did whatever it took to reframe the questions in a consistent way so that we had a consistent application of the assessment, and we provided specific accommodations so that everyone could participate. Any questions about the design of the study? Oh, sorry. So it was 1 year post-intervention, and then now we're collecting actually the second year post, 2 years out, for the last wave. So the percentages here. Oh, you know what? So yeah, they're definitely post-intervention, yes. We don't have the percentages from this very last study that we're still collecting data on. Okay. So, but they're always a year post. How long was that? 1 year. 1 year, okay. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. Yeah, no, totally. So the youth that are involved for 2 years total, right? So they have 1 year of intervention, then 1 year of follow-along.
So you said that there was a control group and then the experimental group. How did that look differently? So I'm just wondering, like, because
right.
The control group, even though they didn't have a counselor, they knew that they were doing the study, so is that going to affect it in some way? And did they still have to check in with somebody on a regular basis? Or like, how does that
Great questions. We have actually so many articles written on this question, right? Because this is a very mobile population. Young people in foster care move a lot. And once they exit the system, there is no tracking mechanism to keep in touch with them. So we have developed our own personal tracking mechanisms and written several articles about it and been published, because we go above and beyond and we do things that no one else has ever done before to keep in touch with these people, especially if they're in the control group, because we don't have that one-on-one connection with them every single week. So what that looks like, if you're in the control group, you just go on with your daily life. You do whatever you're already doing, you continue to do. And we have people who check in with you. We send birthday cards to them, just reminding them, say, hey, we're still here, hope you're doing well. If they moved, we always had ways that they could keep in touch with us. We gave them our phone numbers. We gave them postcards that they could mail in. And then we actually provided incentives for them to keep in touch with us. So if they updated their contact info with us, we'd pay them $20. And when they did the assessments, we also gave them an incentive of $40 for doing the assessment. It took about 2 hours each time to do the assessments. So that's what it looked like. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Okay. So the intervention was coaching, 1 year of coaching weekly, and the peer-led workshops. The workshops, we offered 6 per year of the youth we required. I say required in quotes because, these are adolescents. We can't really make them do anything. But we really encouraged them to attend at least 4 of these workshops in the year. So they had this peer group that they were with, and the near peers facilitating those workshops in addition to their coach that they met with weekly. The intervention is a specific approach based on self-determination combined with this book here called Take Charge for the Future. These are the skills that coaches worked on with their youth. Being a coach doesn't mean you sit down with every single youth and you start going page by page, because a lot of times when the youth see this, they they go to sleep. Or they are like, oh wait, actually I'm busy, I cannot see you today. So you got to be creative. You've got to meet people where they're at. You've got to get to know them. You've got to build rapport. You've got to genuinely care about the person sitting in front of you and learn how they learn best so that you can do this with them in a genuine, authentic, meaningful way, which means in context of their lives, related to what they want to do, and application, really applying the skills that you're talking about to goals that they have set for themselves in their community, moving forward to where they want to go. Okay? We call it a short-term investment for long-term gain. It's 1 year. 1 year that we work with these youth. They get this, and it's a metacognitive skill-based approach. That's where the long-term gain comes in. These are metacognitive skills. Our approach is metacognitive. What does that really mean? It means think about your thinking. Think about what you're thinking about. Be intentional. I want to do this. What are the pros and cons of this? What are all of my options? Do I really want to run away from this foster home? Where am I going to go? Let's make a plan. Do I really want to drop out of high school? Do I really want to get a GED? What are my options? Let me think about this. Okay, so thinking about your thinking, being intentional, moving forward. That's really what I want to think about with you all today too. Not only are we reflecting on where we've come from and where we're going and what our goals are and what our dreams are, but really being thoughtful in how we move forward. Because that's the way you're going to be most effective in using your support network, okay? If you know really where you want to go and you have a solid start on a plan, then you can use the people in your life to really help you gain traction and momentum and move, okay? It's all about achievement. The stuff that I'm going to talk to you about today is, I think it appears to be so simple and perhaps beneath us, okay? I always say it's so simple, it's profound. I started doing this at 24. And for me, the way I learn, I have to apply something to myself to make it stick with me. So I did everything in this book, and I always do, I still do. And it's so helpful, and it's things that you feel like maybe you should already know. You should already be, well, duh, I know how to be assertive. Or, I know how to break down a goal into bite-sized pieces. But really, when you have an opportunity to organize it in a new way, or something that is so linear and concrete, it can really take you to the next level. So I just ask that today, as we go through some of these skills and some of these exercises, that you kind of come at it with an open mind. Because it seems so fundamental. And it really is. But again, this is all about a foundation, right? We're building a foundation, and the stronger your foundation is, the stronger and taller and bigger and farther you can go up. Okay? Any questions? All right. Sorry, I'm going to keep my phone in front of me today since I totally had no concept of time last time I was here. Oh, thanks. Yeah, go for it.
It says that you have 4 peer-led workshops. Are they in the program? Mm-hmm. Are they the same that we're about to do right now?
No, not at all. Yeah, so the workshops were fun. Oh, they're a lot of work and energy when you got all these young people in a room together, but they're really awesome. So the workshops really looked more like they would vote on topics that they wanted to hear about, and they're always transition-related topics. So maybe they wanted to learn about how to get a driver's license, or they wanted to learn about strategic disclosure of their stories, or healthy relationships, or getting into college, all right? So they would vote on that, and then we had a workshop coordinator who would bring in some peer mentors, and they would craft a plan of how they were going to do that. They always made it very interactive. And then they would have a place in the community that they would host these workshops at. And the first hour and a half would be sort of this interactive, like informative part, right? And then the last hour and a half was always something really fun. So we would do like what's it called? Glow light mini golf, or bowling, or we'd go to pizza, or they did laser tag, or we'd roller skate. And the participants would always vote on what the fun activity was too. So that's what those looked like, not like this.
So we're not doing mini golf?
Yeah, right? I should have passed out something to vote on. We should be doing a fun activity for the last half of this. Any other questions? what brought me into this work? I have a passion for what I consider to be at-risk youth because I could relate to them. You know, I was a high school dropout. I had a really tough time in high school, and I was very, very lost, and sort of at 16 just went to work, you know, got a job and decided, F it, screw it. Whatever. I don't fit in there. And then about maybe 18 months or 2 years of that, I was like, this is not going to work for me. I really hate customer service. I got to go to college and figure it out. So I don't know, I was always drawn to trying to help young people or work with young people because I could relate to them. I just felt a connection with them. And then I just fell into this job. I mean, my mom had a friend who worked at OHSU, and they knew Lori, and you know, it was that whole networking thing. I just was kind of like, yeah, I'll go this way. I'll try it. I got to work. I need a job. And so I started off not quite in my zone with at-risk youth, but my boss, Lori, always knew that was my passion. And so when an opportunity came along, she said, hey, I know this is what you've been interested in. Do you want to look at this potential opportunity? So.
What were the qualifications
For participating? So the qualifications to participate in the project, we had a specific age range. You had to be 16 and a half to 18 and a half when you were enrolled. You had to be in DHS state guardianship. So it couldn't be voluntary foster care. It had to be that you were removed from your family. And within a specific geographical area. That was pretty much it. Yeah.
you guys like seeing trends in like foster care parent involvement with the child? I mean, I guess older, so
Well, you know, it's a good question. She's asking about foster parent involvement, if there was any trends related to that. Is that your question?
yeah.
There's nothing that comes out that's, you know, standing out in any of the data that we have so far, and we didn't look specifically at that. So we didn't collect any data on how involved foster parents were or what we defined as foster parent involvement. So, I mean, as a coach, anecdotally, I could tell you all sorts of things. What I can tell you is that we know that youth who have disabilities have a higher number of placements, therefore less stability, usually farther behind in school. So the more someone moves, you know, the harder it is to keep up. So in general, I can talk about stability versus instability, but that's about all I've got.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant, like
Yeah,
the amount of homes.
absolutely.
Foster care, definitely about parent. Like, are they in the
Definitely.
same, with the same parent for a long period of time?
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things I can tell you, I was talking about Jessica and the T4, one of the things that she's seeing is dramatic differences between youth who are in more restrictive placements, so youth who are in lockdown facilities versus youth in typical foster homes, as well as youth who have more foster placements. One of the interesting things that we found out is that youth in the intervention seem to have more placements. So we're like, well, what does that mean? They're less stable. Well, or they're more assertive. They're more self-determined. They advocate for what they want, and then they go looking for it. So, yeah, very interesting stuff, really. Other questions before we move on? Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to talk to you guys about dreaming. Dreaming is one of the skills that we talk about in our work with youth, and this is an opportunity. You guys have had a lot of information coming at you. I just threw a bunch of numbers at you and a bunch of information. This is an opportunity for you to take a break and really let it go for a minute, okay? I'm going to ask you all to sort of embrace this opportunity, and this is what I tell the youth, I'm not even joking, and get zen for a second, all right? So just let yourself go, and we're going to talk about dreaming in the sense that it's not pressure, right? Whatever you put down today or whatever you think about in your dreams today, I'm not going to expect you to do it. You're not going to expect yourself to do it. You're just going to allow yourself to really let go and think about, if the sky's the limit, if there's no barriers, what do I want? What does it look like? I'm going to walk us through a process called dreaming. Why do we dream? What's the importance of dreaming? Well, it can be hard to dream when you've got reality in front of you and you've got to think about how to pay the bills, you got to be moving out, you got to be finishing school, you got to be getting into school, you got to be yada, 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 right? It never ends. It never stops. So why do we take the time to dream? Dreams don't matter. I hear this a lot. Well, the reason we dream, the reason we think about it is because dreams, when you really get down to the core of your dreams, when you really let yourself dive into this process, it helps you figure out your values, your core values. You can start to look at what you're good at and your preferences. All right, values, talents, preferences. What do we do with all that? What does it matter? Well, that's where you start to realize, what do I want and what am I good at? And that's where you get your goals, okay? So dreams don't have to be pipe dreams. You can make them as big as you want. I don't care if your dream is to, be in the movies or be a sports player. It could be anything. Because what it comes down to is there's values, talents, and preferences associated with these things, right? And those trickle down into some concrete, real goals. So that's what we're going to do right now. So you guys all have a dream wheel. I chose education because it's the theme, for your week. And you can use this dream wheel how you want. I don't care where you write. I don't care if it's inside, outside. I don't care if you make a pretty pattern with your words or if it's just scribbled. I don't care if it's sentences or bullet points. Whatever works for you is fine with me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off some prompts. And I want you guys to think about yourself and really visualize yourself. Take a second to think about who you are, what you look like, what you're wearing 4 years from now. Okay? 4 years from now. Question? You need a dream wheel. You got it. Thank you. Anybody else need handout? All right. Okay, so now you're visualizing, right? And we're talking about the context of education, academics, right? 4 years from now. Maybe you're done with school and the context is that you're on the job learning. Maybe you're at an internship. Maybe you're at the next level of your education, okay? It doesn't matter. Just think really broadly. I'm going to ask you some really broad questions and just think about different components, all right? So first we're going to talk about people. The people in your educational environment, whatever that looks like to you. 4 years from now. What are they going to be like? What are those people like? What are some characteristics? For example, are they patient people? Are they demanding people? Are they fun? Are they laid back? Are they young? Are they old? Does gender matter? What are the people like in your dream? Remember, there's no barriers. It's whatever you want. Think about the environment that these people are in with you. What's the environment like? Is it conservative? Is it liberal? Is it secular? Is it a party atmosphere? Is it really formal? Within all these people, who are going to be the people that are your supporters? Who are your allies, your support network in your educational environment? What do these people do? How do they support you? How do they help? What other kinds of supports are you going to need 4 years from now in your educational environment? Do you need accommodations? Do you need financial support? Do you need specific tools or technical assistance? Now we're going to talk about places related to your educational experience. So think about the places, the place. What type of educational environment are you in? Is it a college? Is it a vocational school? Are you on the job? Are you in a large environment with a lot of people? Are you in a small environment that's more personal? Are you in class? Are you on a job site? Are you in a lab? What does it look like? Where are you? Are you in a city? Are you in a rural environment, small town, big town? Are you in a building? Are you on a farm? Are you close to where you come from? Are you far away from where you come from? How will you get around? Where do you live? Do you live close to where you go to school? Are you on campus? Do you have an apartment? Do you live with roommates? Do you live with your family? Do you live alone? How do you get around? Are you a public transportation person? Do you have a car, bike? How are you moving around your community and your educational environment? Let's think a little bit about the activities that you're going to be doing. What do you want to learn? What kind of stuff are you going to be doing in 4 years in your educational environment? What kind of classes are you doing? What activities are you doing on a daily basis related to your education? What are you working toward? What's the big picture? Are you getting a certification? Are you getting a degree? What is the degree you're thinking of? What other kind of things are you doing on campus or in your related to education? I always say we're whole people, right? We're not just about school, although it might dominate our lives for a long time. Are you doing extracurricular stuff? I don't know about where you all are from. I know here in Portland, there's all sorts of interesting clubs that you can participate in that you can find through your school, like broom ball and I don't know. It's stuff I don't even know. I asked I have to ask, what does it mean? There was one recently that was a new club, and I can't even think of what it was now. But anyway, if you got a hobby, are you going to be doing that? Are you going to find people that are connected to that hobby? Are you going to participate in the student government? Are you into yearbook activities? What are you going to do besides homework? What skills are you going to use? Are you going to be using organizational skills, people skills, studies skills? Computer skills, writing skills? And then just take a moment to have any final thoughts about your educational dream and write down anything else that you want to contribute to it. Again, it's whatever you want. We're not thinking realistically necessarily, we're thinking ideally. Okay, go ahead and take a second and read your dream wheel. Look at it. And I want you to think about a few things. I want you to think about your values. And does this dream wheel reflect any of your values? Let's go ahead and define what a value is. I think that's a really abstract concept. Can anyone throw out an attempted articulation of what that is? What's a value?
Like your integrity, like what you think is right or wrong,
Yeah, so your integrity of what you think is right or wrong, is that what you said?
or how you view yourself.
Sure, how you view yourself and other people, yeah. Go ahead. Your ethics. Uh-huh. Yeah. Other ways to describe a value?
Internalized conviction that drives you to make decisions.
Right. Yeah. An internalized conviction that drives you to make decisions. Is that right, what you said? Yeah. Exactly. So I always think about a value as it's something that we feel so strongly about. It's something that's so within us that we live our life a certain way. Those are values. So if you look at your dream wheel, you can probably find some values. Is anyone finding a value? You can just raise your hand and say, yeah, I found a value. You don't have to tell me what it is. Good. Is anyone having trouble finding a value in their dream wheel? It's not quite clicking? Okay, that's good. Talents. What's a talent?
Something you're good at.
Yes. You took the words right out of my head. Yes. Something you're good at. Do you see talents in your dream wheel? Is anyone not finding a talent on their dream wheel? Struggling to see a talent, something that you're good at? No talents on there? Okay. Right? All right. So sometimes it's hard for us to see our own strengths. And oftentimes when I am working with someone who, it's really common that people don't see a talent in their dream wheel. It's really common that they don't see the values in it either at first. So I usually start asking questions about their dream wheel and sort of getting into what's on their dream wheel and if they think that anything is relevant. So I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. Don't worry. But I think that it might be an interesting conversation for you to have with someone that you care about, to sort of share a dream wheel and sort of look at it and reflect on what you're good at. Talents come in many shapes and sizes, and so I guess I'm willing to bet there's some talents on there. I don't know. It's up to you. Preferences. What's a preference?
Do you like over other things?
Right, something you like over other things. Yeah, exactly. I prefer this. That's a preference. I would rather it be this over this. So an example often on a preference on a dream wheel like this is I would prefer to go to a smaller school over a bigger school. Or I would prefer to be in a city rather than in a rural environment. These are preferences. So what you have to decide is what's a preference and what's an absolute. Okay, and it's not the same for everybody. It might be that it's a non-negotiable that I go to a 4-year university. That's not a preference, it's an absolute, right? So look at your dream wheels and figure out what are your preferences? What do you want but you can shift if you had to? And what is a non-negotiable? What is a must-have for you in your dream educational environment? You know, it's interesting, when you start dreaming, we tend to be drawn to things that we have a passion for, or that we're good at, or that we are comfortable with, we have a familiarity with, right? So it's why a lot of us go into a field that maybe we can relate to it in some way, or we're passionate about it in another way, or we're drawn to it because we're good at it. We've always excelled in some way in this area. And I want you to think about this concept that your dreams can become your goals. all right? It might seem so huge, but we can pull out some specific concrete goals out of your dream wheels. And then you're going to take those goals and you're going to start thinking about the activities to start working on those goals and getting the support, right? All of this is about connecting your support network to where you want to go and helping you move forward so that you can take some action and start achieving your goals, right? All one step at a time. I work with adolescents, so some of the references that come to mind aren't necessarily relevant to you all, but graduating high school, that's a huge, sometimes that feels like a dream that cannot be accomplished to a lot of the young people I work with. And that's a huge goal, right? So let's break that all down, and it always starts with one step. And sometimes that step is asking mom to get me up because I sleep through my alarm. That is one seemingly small activity that might take a month for someone to do. And when they get it done, that's an achievement, okay? That is one step farther along, one step closer to this big goal or this dream. And that's where I want you guys to think about. You can do this. You can do whatever is on that dream wheel, break it down, make it a goal, and get some support. Ask for help, right? Any thoughts about dreams? Or turning it into action? Gaining support? It's all clicking? Well, thanks for going through the process with me. We're going to go ahead and move on. So coordinating your support. This is all about gaining traction, getting momentum, and organizing the people who are going to be helping you out. Remember back to your eco maps, and you guys had these lines that were drawn to different people, and then you did some goal work where you connected people to specific goals. So sometimes, depending on what your goals are or what you're working on at the time or what activity you're working on, it might make sense to bring a couple of your support people in at the same time so that everything is coordinated. Does that make sense? So you might need some help from two different people in two different departments, but it's for the same thing. And if we're not all on the same page, things can get confusing. Or I might have to do something twice. So it's okay to start coordinating your support people, coordinating allies and how they're helping you. And that can look a lot of different ways. A lot of times, these days we do a lot of email coordination. And I want to emphasize that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to feel like you got it all on lock when you're going to send this email out to people that maybe you don't know very well, but you need some help from. It's okay to say, look, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go, but I know I need this and I know I need this, and I just don't want us to be doing duplicate work, or I'm not sure if it makes sense to coordinate all together. And ask for advice. It's okay not to have the answers. Reach out, take a risk, and think about who you need help from and if it makes sense for everybody to be working together, okay? And doesn't mean that they're going to be taking a lot of time. It just means that they need to know that this person in this department is helping you in this way. So that means that in their way to help you, they can do this, so you guys are all coordinated. Does that make sense at all? Okay. Sometimes it might make sense to get people together in the same room, depending on how high level the coordination is and how many people there are to coordinate. Maybe you're going to be putting on a fundraiser at school for something. Maybe you're going to be, raising money for a research project. Maybe you're going to be reaching out to a group of young people and you want to do a focus group. Who knows what you might be coordinating, but make sure that you reach out to all the right people and start the process. Ask for help and lay it out. I'm not sure how this is going to look, but here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I want. Always go back to those 3 steps about asking for help. Be really clear about what you want, which means prepare before you do this, right? It's okay not to have all the answers, but be as prepared as possible. Be yourself, be transparent. I think that's basically what I've been telling you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a couple of skills. Because sometimes when you need support or you need help, this came up a little bit in our last conversation, sometimes depending on the person's role or what they've got going on, you might get a scripted answer. Here is what I tell everybody to your request. Here is why I cannot do what you need to do. Here's what you have to do instead. That's just life, right? We're all part of systems. We're all part of bureaucracies. Sometimes we get an answer that isn't going to really be helpful or sufficient. So we've got a couple options. The option to stop there and give up and go down another path is always an option. It might be worth considering. We could also consider being assertive and negotiating. Oftentimes, people can do things for you that maybe they thought they couldn't if you offer a bit more information about what you're looking for. So to be assertive, it seems like something that's easy and natural for many of us. What I find is that oftentimes people tend to be either really shy and quiet or sort of abrasive almost, rather than finding that sort of middle ground where you're looking people in the eye, you're speaking clearly about what you want, and the most important part of being assertive is explaining why you want that. Sometimes when people hear why you want what you want, they get it. They understand, oh, you want me to give you an extension because blah, 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 blah. That makes some sense. I get it. That's reasonable and rational. I can help you. All right? Add a bit more information is what I'm getting at. That last step of state what you want again and give them reasons why. That's being assertive. Negotiation, another one that seems really fundamental and obvious, but it doesn't always come naturally. Sometimes we have to be really thoughtful and intentional, right? Being metacognitive, thinking about what we're doing, making intentional decisions. Sometimes we need to negotiate. So the first thing you want to do when you're negotiating with someone, listen. That's really hard for me to do, but I work on it because I have to be intentional about it. Listen to what they want. What is the concern? Usually on the other end, they're as rational as you are. So when you hear what they want, you can understand the predicament that they're in. And then you can decide what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to live with, right? You can meet in a middle ground. Okay, well, I can't have as long of an extension as I want, but they're willing to give me 24 hours more. Can I live with that? Compromise. Meet in the middle. Questions or thoughts about assertiveness and negotiation? Yeah, go for it.
The best part of assertiveness when you're asking someone for something like that is to follow up afterwards. Even if you don't get what you want from that person doing it, letting the other person know that, hey, I didn't do it, but I really appreciated what you did for me, that's really important. It not only helps you get more help from that person, but that person, if you tell them something positive, is more willing to help the next person who asks.
It's a really good point. Again, it goes back to reciprocity, right? Sort of like, and being grateful. Being thankful for the help that you're getting, and acknowledging that someone went out of their way to help you. That's a really important part, in maintaining those connections so that we're building these relationships so that they're ongoing. Any other thoughts? Don't forget to schmooze, right? I don't know. When we're being assertive and we're in negotiation mode, sometimes we kind of don't realize how we're coming across. It's really easy to sort of step over into being abrasive when you're trying to be assertive, especially if you're new at it and you're practicing your assertiveness skills or your negotiation skills. So be friendly. Don't ever forget this is a person sitting across from you and you're a person too. And we're just trying to have a conversation so we can meet in the middle and move forward in some way, right? Okay, so life is not linear. A lot of times we have a plan, we're moving forward in what we think is a linear fashion. Many of us have very extensive, detailed plans with lots of notes and arrows and bullet points and, extensive maps of how we're going to get to where we need to go. And that's fabulous. The thing is, life happens, and sometimes we have to take detours. Or sometimes we get where we're on our path, we're moving right down the path, and we realize, I'm not as stoked on this as I thought I was. This isn't really what I want to do. I don't really like this course. I don't like this course of education. It's super boring. I can't take 3 years of it. I don't really like the people that I work with. I don't like the kind of people that are drawn to this. Whatever. Things change. And I just want to normalize that. That's okay. Change is okay. We can always reevaluate. We can always take a step back. We can always make a new plan and put as many bullet points on it as we want and get as many new arrows going into a different direction, and that's totally okay. Or if you're not an arrow and bullet point person and you just want to change directions, that's okay. Be thoughtful and intentional. Think about your options, think about where you want to go and why you want to shift. And if you want to shift, do it. Everything that you have learned in the process of going on that first path, you can apply to this new path. All these skills are transferable. Meeting people, schmoozing with them, sending emails, crafting your elevator speech, deciding what's important to you, asking for help, schmoozing, negotiation, assertiveness, you can do that in any realm, all right? It's not just in one context. In fact, it doesn't always have to be education, right? It can be anything. So practice applying the same skill in a different context over and over. It becomes natural, it becomes organic, it becomes part of you and how you live, and you realize you become effective. I get in trouble sometimes with my people, my personal friends or partners, because they think I'm talking to them like I talk to my youth. And the thing is, that's how I talk to everybody. So I am talking to them how I talk to my youth because I've internalized this curriculum. It is how I speak in life. And I kind of hate that people think that I'm like trying to counsel them, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just being me. But I've been doing this for 10 years and I believe in it and I have a passion for it, so it's kind of how I talk. I say schmoozing to my children. My children know all too well about negotiation. I really wish they would just listen to me and do what I say rather than being like, how about? So it's just how I am. It's how I live my life these days. So practice it. You know, we did that role play earlier on Tuesday, and it's kind of awkward when you're practicing new language or approaching something a different way that you haven't done it before. But once you do it over and over, it really becomes part of you, and you can craft it in your own words and really own it. So be a risk taker. Go out there and do what you want to do. Any final thoughts or comments or questions or complaints?
Well, I want to thank you, first of all.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I just want to say, one of my thoughts is that I really agree with the program, but one of the reasons is, like, I don't think a lot of people, unless they came from a place without a lot of support, would understand how great this is for everyone. So for me, I can definitely relate with that, because it's just those incremental amounts of support that get us further. So for everyone going into their respective fields, you see someone you don't think they're gonna, just give them a little bit of support. That's really what a dream is, just one person. So,
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Good? Yeah, go for it.
From like a part of what you said, so it's easy to relate to someone, like how we will have mentors, if there's similarities in the background, or even if it's us to someone in maybe a adverse situation.
Right.
But how does someone who clearly there's a difference,
Mm-hmm.
without the obvious like spending time with them,
Mm-hmm.
do you have like advice on tactics or skills to be able to be effective and not seem like it's me distant talking to you here, and I understand what your situation is, even though I live in this totally different situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. So some people we connect with and identify with, and it's easy, and some people we don't really relate to. So how do we talk to them, or how do we sort of find a common ground or a connection? I really think it comes back to schmoozing, just being friendly. Most people can relate to someone who will just look them in the eye and smile and introduce himself. Hi, my name is, here's what I'm looking for, or here's why I'm talking to you. I need this support, or I know that you did a project 10 years ago that I'm really interested in how you did something. So you're gonna be reaching out generally to people that you either have a specific purpose for talking to them, or because there's some sort of common ground and connection within the field that they're in or the schooling that they've done. So highlight that common ground. Explain to them what it is that you do have in common with them. It's a really good question, because I work with a lot of youth who come from very different backgrounds from me, and I've had a lot of parents or caseworkers who are very skeptical of how I can relate. How can you relate to this kid, Summer? What do you think you can really do? How can you be effective? And like you say, I have the luxury of time with them, right? But I can always find common ground with someone just by asking them some questions. What are your hobbies? What are you into? Making small talk, essentially, getting to know them. You'll start to find those connections. There's something there. Yeah, of course. Other thoughts or questions? I think we're good. Oh, look at that. That was great.